Hi people, I look dumb as hell. Maybe I'm just not used to straight hair, but I don't know how to put on wigs. I tried my best. Okay, and I told you it was gonna be scuffed. So if you expected a full-blown, all-out, Wano style Boa Hancock or even Amazon Lily, hold your horses, cause I'm broke. What do you think this is? Hopefully, your expectations weren't too high. Okay, that's all I gotta say. But yeah, today we're gonna be talking about Amazon Lily and Sabaody Archipelago. Bro, I can't stop touching the hair. We'll be discussing the interlacing themes between the two. Sabaody Archipelago kicks off this last major confrontation before the end of pre-time skip. Similarly to Water 7, is disguised as this fun, happy-go-lucky arc. There's bubble bicycles, there's the introduction to the super rookies like Trafalgar Law and Eustace Kid. Stories of Goldie Roger, we meet Riley. There's lots of fun stuff that happens, but immediately it takes turn whenever Luffy defies authority or the Celestial Dragons, which results in him losing his crew, his ship, and being left all alone for pretty much the rest of pre-time skip. So what can the underlying themes tell us about Oda's politics and, of course, as always, our own world? Before we get into any of that, subscribe. I have... Girl, why does it keep coming forward? I have Instagram, Patreon. If you want exclusive access to my video drafts, script drafts, outlines, check out the details regarding that on the Patreon to see what I offer. Girl, I don't know how you people wear wigs. I feel like most of the wigs that people wear are much more expensive and better, and they're also human hair sometimes. It's a weird experience. Starting with the Celestial Dragons, they are a pure bloodline. They are the descendants of the gods who created the world. So they are a divine class, an upper class, the highest class that there is, and people must bow before them. And you even see pirates, some of the supernovas bowing before them. There's even this part where Zoro is encountering Bonnie and he nearly gets in trouble because he doesn't even know who the Celestial Dragons are, and Bonnie has to help him not get arrested. But it's an interesting dynamic to have the pirates also, who are of course these anarchists who their entire lifestyle consists of defying the law, but when it comes to Celestial Dragons, that suddenly shifts and changes. It's giving white supremacy. It's hard to create a one-to-one, of course. You can't really create a one-to-one on anything in One Piece, but there are certain elements that definitely remind us of things in our own world. When we think about this pure bloodline that the Celestial Dragons have, that especially reminds me of elements of white supremacy, like the concept of swarthy, if we're going back to the 1700s and the beginning of America with Benjamin Franklin, people that we would consider white now being swarthy, like the Irish, the Italians, the Eastern Europeans. These are all people that were considered not white at that time, but now of course we do consider white, and that's a whole nother situation to get into. Whiteness, that could probably be a good video essay, honestly. It's become apparently clear to me that people, at least online, I'm sure regular people are I'm staying far away from that, but people online, especially Redditors and people in the depths of YouTube comments, do not give a frick about the N-word. Especially whenever it comes to my most popular video essay, the cryotic one, people were defending PewDiePie so freaking hard over the N-word, girl. over the N-word. Like, you guys want to say it so bad. Like, chill, please chill. But also concepts like protecting the white race, which is, you know, where a swarthy in that like classification comes from. Creating this pure bloodline where outsiders are not allowed to come in is a part of protecting the race, protecting this supremacist thinking. Also reminds me of like the one drop rule with slavery, which, you know, slavery will be very important to our conversation later. White genocide, don't take the bloodline, etc. Misogyny and consensual sex between people of different races being classified as like this threatening of the white race. Once again, chill. Also systematic supremacy, which we see in this arc in Sabaody Archipelago. White supremacy in America has historically reaches from housing to the police to the judicial system, and you can definitely see that take place in this arc with the Marines working in the interest of the celestial dragons, not in the interest of the citizens that inhabit the Sabaody Archipelago. They mainly are there to keep the citizens in check, honestly, to keep them in line and to make sure no one disrespects the elites, which is what the police do to this day and have historically done with, I mean, the beginnings of the police, if we're gonna go into it, starts with the slave catchers. Slaves were a commodity, and so they were a form of capital. If a slave were to run away, that would be losing money, and so slave catchers helped protect that first form of capital in the early stages of America. And then, you know, if we're going to talk about like the beginnings of the FBI, the Pinkertons, once again doing the same thing. Then in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you get the police actually being a full-fledged organization finally. It also coincides with workers' strikes and fighting for the workers' rights that we now have, like the weekend and not getting your fingers cut off or your arms cut off and black lung and all of that. They were fighting for all of that at that time, and the police were there to suppress it and once again work in the interest of the white elites. So it creates this precedent within the police. I mean, I've said it a lot that they're there to protect the white elites. And the Marines are doing that exact same thing in this arc. So there's definitely like an allegory between the aristocrats, the white elites, the imperialists. We don't know too much about the celestial dragons at this point. We just know that they're like rich and divine. Just from a first impression, I think we can conclude that they're probably the individuals who are carrying out violence across the globe in some way. They definitely have their hands in this situation in some way, which maybe Oda will touch on later. I assume these celestial dragons will come back and be important. I don't think this is the first time that we're gonna see them. I remember a commenter called me a celestial dragon. So funny, girl. After I was talking about Ukraine in my last One Piece video on Ines Lobby, when I was talking about Ukraine and how America doesn't give a frick about Ukraine, and for that brave and bold take that's very obvious by the fact that America has the military industrial complex in America has been around since like the end of World War II. So we sell weapons to Ukraine, to Saudi Arabia, to a lot of our allies, and so this war in Ukraine continuing only fuels the pockets of America. But yeah, I'm a celestial dragon for having that brave and bold take. Yeah, as they sit there and also fund genocide in Palestine and also in Yemen. But I'm a celestial dragon, okay? So Luffy's defiance, as mentioned earlier, this is really like the first time that Luffy has held back his natural anarchist tendencies for his friend Hachan. Hachan was originally a part of the Arlong Pirates, but after that was dissolved, now he has become our friend. And so Luffy tries his best to hold back against this thing that he very clearly sees is wrong within the Celestial Dragons. And it is definitely a significant defiance. I mean, Luffy, up until this point, literally in every arc, defies someone who is powerful or holds more power in the world than him. This is like a time where it will definitely get him into a ton of trouble. And I think the other pirates, the other supernovas, recognizing the power that the Celestial Dragons have and not wanting to disrupt that definitely sets up how dangerous this is for Luffy to then proceed to, and not just punch girl, but like he went ham. If we're to think about how certain examples within history of people defying in a way that is like, you know, well known that you shouldn't defy. If we're to think about like whistleblowers, for example, there's the Boeing whistleblowers. John Barnett was a quality manager at the Boeing 787 plant in South Carolina, and he raised concerns about the firm's production standards. He told the BBC before his death that under pressure workers had been deliberately fitting substandard parts to the aircraft on the product line, and he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But it becomes even more sus when we talk about Joshua Dean, an inspector at Boeing, who was one of the first to flag potentially dangerous defects with the 737 jets and died from sudden onset MRSA. I don't think these two are the only two that have died. There might be more, but these are the main examples that definitely call into question not only Boeing's safety, which has definitely been called into question lately. I feel like I've seen a lot of videos about like just accidents within the Boeing, but also just like Boeing in general and its history with being a bit shady when it comes to how they cut corners. But yeah, don't fly Boeing. Okay, if you want to save your life, don't fly Boeing. But there's also whistleblowers in the military, like Chelsea Manning. In 2010, while working in Iraq, Chelsea, who was a Army intelligence analysis, provided hundreds of thousands of military and diplomatic records about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan to WikiLeaks, and what is regarded as the largest leak of classified records in US history. To her, leaking this information was a matter of principle, and she was sentenced to 35 years in prison, but only served 7 after, I believe, Obama let her out. Also, there's the recent college protests, which I have a whole video on, so I won't go into depth too much, but they are definitely an example of fighting actively against the state. I mean, any form of protest like this that is this huge is a significant defiance of all of the propaganda, all of the talking points we've been fed through the education system or the media. I mean, it goes against all of that. Honestly, the fact that anyone is able to break through the biases that we are taught is kind of exceptional in its own right. I mean, our enemies in the college protests are literally entire states like Israel and America. Like, that's a huge enemy to have. It's this David and Goliath story, this seemingly impossible task, which Luffy definitely has this David-like vibe to him. It is a dynamic that has set up the entire show, a small boy who everyone underestimates but always comes out on top. So in Sabaody Archipelago, how do you say this word? Archipelago? There's a massive slave trade on the island. Slave catchers, which we, went over, make their money here kidnapping people and selling them off to the auction house for a profit. Kami, who is friends with Hachan that we meet at the beginning of this arc before arriving at Sabaody Archipelago, is a mermaid and is captured and taken to auction. Mermaids are a hot commodity. They typically go for like 2 million berries. So this was a huge find for the slave catchers, for the auction house. We're hoping to make big bank. St. Charlos is looking for a mermaid to go in his fish tank and be, something for his patrons to watch and admire. And he bids 5 million, forcing these Straw Hats to fight for her freedom. Like I said, they didn't really want to fight because Hachan requested that they don't. But we can't just let Kami get sold off. Like, what? And we get this intro to Law and Kid, who become accomplices. I'm a big fan of Law, just because I know that he and Luffy are gonna be besties. Because honestly, I'm in post-war, almost done with pre-time skip, and he's a little sus, okay? Oda's presenting him as a little sus right now, but I know that he'll be a bestie. I'm okay with him. I think it also speaks a lot to his and Kid's character that they were the only ones out of the 11 other rookies that were willing to not coward to the celestial dragon. Kid, he's okay, I guess. I don't know. Like, some people call him useless Kid, and I don't blame them. He's got a bunch of goths on his ship. He's cool, I guess. His power is cool. That's about it, yeah. Now, Boa Hancock, who I am dressed up as right now to the best of my ability. It would have been so cool if I could have gone like blue contacts. I'm not wearing earrings blue contacts and the snake that she has would have been so cute. It would really complete the look. You know, maybe one day I'll do full cosplay. But anyways, she hides from her citizens that she and her sisters are slaves. Under captivity, they were forced to eat their devil fruits for entertainment, but escaped captivity after Fisher Tiger released them from Mary Louise. I think there's definitely a significance in a minority or widely hated class being the one to free them. If you don't know, the fishmen in One Piece they're kind of like the black people of One Piece. They're widely hated, widely feared. They're viewed as monsters, and it once again, similar to Arlong Park, hints at like there's something deeper lying beneath the surface, kind of preparing you for Fishman Island. But like I said, this widely hated, widely feared minority like a fishman freeing people, definitely like Oda's trying to say something here. Let's go through some slave rebellions throughout history. In America, we have the Nat Turner Slave Rebellion on August 21st to 22nd, 1831. An enslaved preacher, Nat Turner, launched the deadliest slave revolt in American history. The slaves killed 55 men, women, and children in an effort to achieve liberation. Less than 24 hours later, they were stopped despite their best efforts to reassemble. White slavers reestablished their power, killing roughly 36 black people, punishing the rest, and of course, the rest went back into slavery. There's also the Haitian Rebellion, which was way more of a militant rebellion compared to like any American slave rebellion. Between 1791 and 1804, there were a series of conflicts that ultimately led to Haiti's liberation from France. On August 21st, 1791, thousands of slaves attended a secret voodoo ceremony. Later that night, as a tropical storm rolled in, the thunder cracked, they revolted, killing their masters. Both of these rebellions, successful or not, give light to the human desire to be free. And even if they weren't successful at the moment, they did eventually lead to the liberation of the slaves. Fisher Tiger's revolts share similarities to this moment. He set fire to the prison. It seems as if it was an extremely violent rebellion. It did not come easy, but politics does not exist without violence, especially when it comes to oppression, which is definitely a hot topic now, as we are in the midst of a genocide and people are mad at people resisting against oppression, denying that they're being oppressed in the first place, and saying, how do you have the audacity to resist? You should just sit there and die, sit there and starve, let your children starve, let your children be buried in the rubble. How dare you? And this is not dissimilar to what these people had to go through, who faced the exact same things. I cannot reiterate in each video how much we just blatantly repeat history. Slaves had to go through the same thing of being told that their humanity wasn't worth it, and that was reasserted through the actions of the slavers who whipped them. And there's a lot of messed up stuff, obviously, that happened in chattel slavery. I mean, chattel slavery is the worst. I mean, all slavery is bad, but like treating people like they're literal animals is like, it can't get worse than that. Like chopping off limbs, raping them, just all sorts of things that happen, separating them from their families, not only through the actions of the slavers, but also through the words. They were told that they didn't deserve their humanity. Even after black people were freed, our humanity was still denied, our rights were still denied, and still are to this day in some ways. None of this is new, but in One Piece, the fishmen reclaimed the slave branding by turning it into a sun, which we through Hachi learn a little bit more about the Arlong pirates, who were originally oppressed and enslaved, and subsequently rebranded the symbol to give them some sort of power from that moment. Throughout Amazon Lily, Boa Hancock hides her branding and believes others will look down on her if they know she's a slave. I mean, especially as the leader of an entire country. It makes up a story about her sisters fighting Gorgon and being cursed with eyes in their backs. Truth is, it's all fake, and she just doesn't have the courage to admit that. If we are to dive a little bit deeper into the slave trades, past and present, it is important that we break down one of the most infamous slave trades, the Atlantic. I think at this point we're all aware of chattel slavery, hopefully. But how exactly did the Atlantic slave trade set up the US economy for success? I mean, if we are to loop slavery back to the Marines operating similarly to the way the police do, protecting capital, protecting the elite, the celestial dragons, how do they interconnect, how they weave into each other? The transatlantic slave trade enriched many white people across occupations and industries, from early European colonists to priests and popes, shipbuilders to rum and textile producers, bankers to insurers, and generated the capital used to build some of America's greatest cities and most successful companies. I mean, even Kendrick Lamar references it in Not Like Us. Banks provided capital to plantations for the purchase of more land or enslaved people. Obviously, slaves, like I said, were treated as an expendable commodity that could be used as collateral in business transactions, which I didn't even know. It also became a source of tax revenue for state and local governments. Cotton was comprised of half of all US exports. In this aftermath, even influenced the success of white people. It created the wealth disparity that exists today by providing reparations not to the enslaved, but to the slavers. And obviously, as everything I described before, they were already set up to be more wealthy than anybody else, but that was only boosted when they were the ones that were given reparations. Doesn't this like economic, collateral, words like collateral, the bank being involved, doesn't that remind you of like something similar? Almost like the world we live in today, but like with enslaved people kind of running that system. The slavery-based economy set up the capitalist system that we have today, allowing America to transition from a feudal slavery-based economy to a capitalist one. If we are to talk about modern slave trades, slavery in America has manifested itself in the modern prison system. If we are to talk about like domestically, but I kind of can't talk about that because Impel Down's the next video, so we gotta wait on that. But we also sometimes, there's a lot of Republican states that are rolling back child labor laws. That's another form of slavery. But we also use outsourcing as a main way to cut cost for corporations, which a lot of the times includes slavery. So these are the types of slavery today: human trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage or bonded labor, child slavery, and domestic servitude are some of the main ones. I feel like people in this audience wouldn't have like favorite brands, but some of the most popular brands and corporations definitely use this. I mean, some of the things you may own also use this. There is no ethical consumption capitalism, need I remind you. According to Anti-Slavery International, 27 million people are believed to be trapped in slavery. This includes 17.3 million people who are exploited in forced labor in the private economy and 3.9 million who are subjected to state-imposed forced labor. This includes in supply chains or international businesses supplying our goods and services. And it exists on every level of the supply chain, from harvesting to extracting minerals, manufacturing and shipping. I think some of us are hyper aware of it when it comes to the Congo. Not only are they in the midst of a civil war, I think they had a coup recently, but they also are subject to forced labor in cobalt mining. And there's also coffee extraction in like Latin America. The global economy favors profit over people. No surprise there. It is this inescapable cycle where every inch of our lives, at least in the developed world, is touched by outsourced, possibly slave labor. So if we were to connect that back to the celestial dragons, the capital owners, the elite, there is a reason why Oda is connecting slavery to the celestial dragons. That's by design. Oda obviously understands that the two are intertwined, interconnected. It may seem kind of jarring if you aren't aware of that connection. It may not make sense to you. It may just be like, whoa, he's doing this because they're really bad. But like, he's also possibly doing it because there's a connection between the two classes. Even in the modern world, as I just stated through all of this, the white elite, just like in chattel slavery, depended on slave labor for the majority of their capital gains. So really nothing has changed, which we will also discuss in the next video with Impel Down. Nothing has changed. Similarly, if we're to think back to like Skypiea and settler colonialism, Oda is drawing from the overarching themes of slavery, the wealthy elite, to not just like in America, but all across the world, to create this global understanding that most of us in the developed world can have some semblance of understanding about. Maybe even people in the third world who watch One Piece can understand that, because they're probably a lot closer to it than we are. Once again, Oda is touching on oppression. Like I said, that has to be something that he really cares about because he's always talking about it in some way. And Sabaody Archipelago and Amazon Lily are no different. Once again, if you need hope amidst these atrocities, always look toward Luffy. Even though we are the small little boy who everyone underestimates, if we work collectively together, we will win and be on the right side, just like best boy Luffy. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.